There are, if you are, how many, 1400 SEZs today already in India. 1400. In China there are only 2. They're huge mega projects, but there are only 2. In China, government owns the land. Government owns the investments, government owns the profits, which means at least remotely people have a remote, even if it doesn't actually happen, but they have a right to it. But in India, it is owned by private institutions and private companies. Raises number of issues. In my own land, I am a foreigner. I can't go into an SEZ without a permit. An IAS bureaucrat is the person who looks after the SEZ's entire management. That individual is like a dictator. He is not accountable, she is not accountable to anyone except the SEZ. So, in this, what are you creating? What kind of governance structures are you creating? No elections are possible within the SEZ. Would give away quantities of its own land for an illusory growth which doesn't really take place, for a kind of building of infrastructure which really doesn't take place, and dispossess your own people of land, of livelihood, is appalling. There surely must be other ways of development. Markets are needed, industrial growth is necessary, nobody is denying that. But is this the only way? Where you kill your own people, you disenfranchise your own people, you take them away from livelihoods and make them starve to death? Certainly not. And if we are today worried about what's happening in the Red Corridor, let me tell you that there is a Red Corridor today because we have not attended to people's needs. We have not attended to their basic needs. You go to Chhattisgarh, you go to Jharkhand, what you take for granted in Karnataka, however corrupt it may be, you can't take for granted in Jharkhand. Access is denied to people in large numbers. For many of us who are mainstream Indians, tribals don't exist except on the periphery of either the Republic Day parade when they come in the dress in their finery and dance, whether they are Naga tribals or whether they are Adivasis from Jharkhand, or artifacts we buy, ethnic clothing we buy, or brassware we buy. We don't think of them. And when Christian missionaries went into the jungle to start some schools and some hospitals, the RSS went after them and they raped the nuns and they killed the priests and they did all sorts of things. So as a result, even that, I'm not saying that was the only solution, but they did go. Voluntary organizations, NGOs or movements went in, they were dubbed Maoists and Naxalites. Dr. Vinayak Sen was in jail. There was no harm that he did to the state, except question that civil liberties are a right every individual who is a citizen of India has. No matter whether he is a Maoist or a criminal, they have a right to know what is going on against them and they have access to processes of law. If this is the case, SEZ is going to lead to absolute chaos in this country. You are going to have one red corridor and you will have not red, you can paint it purple or any other color you like, but there is going to be absolute unrest. You cannot uproot people without rationality and reason, without genuine cause and throw them out in place after place after place. In Mangalore, 20% of the district, land of the district is going to be given to SEZ. How many of you have seen Mangalore? Maybe you come from there. It's beautiful countryside. It's triple crop, rich, water, plenty, forest, multiple vegetation. And on revenue records, they are entering them as barren land. Because the SEZ says, unless it is declared as barren land, you can't acquire it. In Tamil Nadu, where we did another public audit, districts of Madurai and Tirunelveli, triple crop land, are being entered as barren in their revenue records. So they have started fudging the revenue records. So it's a time now for all of us as citizens of India to take note of what is happening. Because, and I'm going to end here because I want to answer your questions and also have discussion, there is plenty more to say. And I'll end with two quotations. One is this very famous, I think Dutch or Belgian priest, whose name I always forget, who during the Second War wrote this poem, which the gist of it is, he writes in first person, that when they came to take the communists away, I said nothing, because I was not a communist. When they came and killed the trade unionists, I said nothing, because I was not a trade unionist. When they came and killed the socialists, I said nothing, because I am not a socialist. When they destroyed the books and killed the intellectuals, I said nothing, because I was not an intellectual. But when they came and knocked on my door, I had no one to speak for me. let us understand things are linked. So for social action and for democratic action, we must understand that we are all interrelated. And when civil liberties, fundamental rights, or any kind of human rights violations take place, it's not only on the other side. The state is now pushing to see how far they can push us. If you look at it, for instance, in Chhattisgarh, there was a statement made by the Home Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, that they would take the army in. Soon enough, though this was not good enough, but soon enough in Delhi, we set up an organization called Citizens Initiative for Peace, in which ex-admirals, ex-generals, ex-MLAs, ex-MPs, ex-judges, civil society activists, all have got together. Journalists of repute, all have got together to say that you cannot use the army against your own people, and we object to it. So unless you've exhausted all peaceful solutions and political solutions, you cannot take the army in. And I'll quote Morales. He says, there is the right and there is the left, but we are the people. So also in Chhattisgarh, let the right fight its battle and let the left fight its battle. But what about the people? And you call them collateral damage? Something I have learned, I'm now talking to you, and you are forced to listen to me. But I think if I don't listen to people, go and live amongst within them, and listen to them, something goes wrong with my common sense. When I sit with them, we the people, as Morales says, never ask for action which is revolutionary so that you can be in the papers. They never ask for religion which is intolerant. They don't ask for fuel wood where you destroy the trees. They don't ask for any of these extremes which we pin on them. They have their feet firmly on the ground. Whenever we talk of fuel wood, my women friends will always say, how can we destroy the trees? Because we need only its branches. They can't destroy the tree, because if they destroy the tree, they destroy the source of fuel wood. So I think somewhere the common sense, the majority of India, which is what we call the 60%, and think they are the margin, I say they are the mainstream. We are the margin. The margin has become very powerful. It's got money, it's got status, it's got education, but still the mainstream is 60% in a democracy. And 60% asserted its rights. That's why you got the NREGA and the RTI. For the first time in the history of India, the 60% said we have a right not only to demand, but to order you to make a law. That law is something which has benefited the whole of India. When we do an SEZ, it only benefits the rich. But when the poor plan, they plan for everybody. The right to information law has not only been for the poor, it's also been for the middle class and the rich, been for urban India. But they planned it in such a manner that it will be for the good for all, for the larger common good, as Arundhati Roy would say.
I want to ask about RTI. When you file an RTI application, if the subject matter is something which is very important or something which is going to take out something, they refuse it. Okay, they know that because I'm going to go complain for the commission that it takes 3-4 months at least. We have 6,000 cases pending in Karnataka. So by the time we reach in the hearing, then they come, most of the PIOs are sent on the hearing date. So we lose slowly interest in that because there are cases piling up in the commission. They are not able to clear those things. So in Karnataka itself, also the RTI Act has been implemented very well. But because of this delay in the clearing these cases, a lot of RTI activists are losing interest in one of the cases which they pick up. Or that subject might lose relevance by the time we clear the case. So in that case, and most of the PIO who has defaulted were not penalized. Very few cases have been there.
Actually, see, this campaign can never stop. What the RTI has become now is not a campaign-based activity anymore. Once we got the law, we all thought, okay, now we are going to be individual users of the law. But the campaign will have to exist parallel to the individual application. So I would suggest that in Karnataka, as in any other states also, where we have similar problems, we must mobilize and do street protests to ask for commissioners, to ask for more people to be posted to the commission, to ask for the pendency to be cleared. We must also organize the campaign to demand that people be penalized.